So the first up is CNST, as I said. So I'll let Rob kind of start with a quick introduction about NEMO. So Rob, thanks for joining us, and I'll give it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I want to welcome everybody to the NEMO virtual conference. I see a lot of names that I'm very familiar with from my past home back in Ithaca. I see a lot of people from CNF. So yeah, thank you again for attending. I want to give a brief introduction to NEMO before turning it over to Mathieu for sort of an in-depth overview of some of the latest features that we've developed over the past 2 or so years. I'll start off with a little bit of a historical perspective. I came to NIST at the end of 2014 to start a research group. And in April of 2018, I became the acting group leader for the CNST and NanoFab while running my research group. So prior to NIST, I was at Cornell, and I was with, that's where I did my PhD, and then I was part of the Cornell Nanoscale facility, which in the early stages ran this custom software package that was used to schedule and interlock tools, equipment. And this was apparently created back in the 80s on a VAX system. So the screen, I recall when I first started at CNF doing research, it had this DOS look and feel to it. And the system was quite slow, and I see Carlos Musa there, so he can probably attest to this. It was buggy, very limited capabilities, and consequently around, I'm going to guess, 2008 or give or take a few years, David Bosch, who's in the one of the attendees, sort of spearheaded this effort to upgrade CNF to Coral, which is this package that was created by Don Schott at Stanford. And in my opinion, in contrast to DTR, this was a wonderful move for CNF. There were some limitations of Coral. It didn't have billing, so a lot of times at the end of the month we would download the data and then upload it back to DTR to generate journal vouchers and so on. So apparently here at NIST, in its early days, the CNST, the NanoFab, utilized Coral as well. This was before my time, and apparently, just through hearsay, they've had many dilemmas with Coral. They wanted all these features, and unlike Cornell, where they had an in-house developer that was developing in Java, they began implementing a new platform, which was named NEMO. So that was the start of NEMO. When I arrived in 2014, my first impression of NEMO was, wow, Cornell should upgrade immediately. NEMO was fast, easy to use, provided lots of information about equipment maintenance and status. It was easy to book equipment with your phone through the internet. While you're in a clean room, we have these sort of tablets that controlled the clean room doors. So when I came on board as an acting group leader a few years ago, and as a lab user, first of all, I had a huge wish list of additional features that would just make the users' lives easier while in the clean room. And through interactions with Mathieu, which we're extremely blessed to have somebody as talented as Mathieu to develop all of these features. He developed all the features that we wanted and more. So in the past 2.5 years, since Mathieu became the primary NEMO programmer developer, the NEMO code increased by several times. And one of the developments initially that we discussed were these plugin features. So if you're familiar with ImageJ and how plugins work with ImageJ, well, it took a little bit of time, and as Mathieu mentioned in his previous slide, he developed a way where you can utilize the code base of NEMO and add plugins. Also, NEMO used to be, this whole thing used to be called NEMO, but now NEMO now is just a variable. So you can call the package anything you like. And as mentioned, the local NIST Center for Neutron Research user facility calls their package Bruce. We also have another facility, local facility, it's a microscopy lab, and their package is called Electron Microscopy Nexus. I'm just going to mention a few more developments and I'll turn it over to Mathieu, but I should mention that at the start of the pandemic, we had the need to control the number of users in a facility. So similar to equipment scheduling, Mathieu implemented a feature that allows users to schedule an area, in this case, the clean room, before scheduling any equipment. And here we can place occupancy limits, notifications if somebody exceeds their scheduled time while in their lab, and a variety of other features. This was a rather popular feature, as you can imagine, because now we can interlock a not only a clean room, but we can interlock a building and also individual rooms within a building. And you can set maximum occupancies of particular areas. And if you have badge controlled access, if you are at the maximum occupancy limit, then it will not let anybody else enter that space. So also during the pandemic, we had quite a bit of time. We developed a 600 plus, well, nearly a 600-page feature manual, which is continuously growing with each release of NEMO. And this feature manual really details every single NEMO feature. So as mentioned, we had lots of developments and are continuously developing NEMO. And this is the point that I will turn the floor over to Mathieu, who will provide sort of an in-depth overview and examples of some of the latest features of NEMO that he has developed. So Mathieu, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Rob, for the introduction and history about NEMO. So I will be talking a little bit here. I'm just going to mention some of the main features and some of the more recent additions, but some of them Rob already kind of alluded to. And then I'll talk a little bit about the different roles and permissions that we have in NEMO, the different users or staff sort of hierarchy that we have in NEMO. And then I'll do a little demo so that you guys can see really what it looks like. So first thing first, I'm gonna start by giving it due. It's been requested for a while. We finally added the feature manual. So this last year, if one thing that it gave us is time walking at home and doing documentation, and there was a tremendous amount of work and effort that was put into the feature manual. So I want to just get that out there. I'll probably be talking a lot about just referring you to the feature manual for this and that. So it's, to me, I think it's been probably the most impactful addition this past year. It is about 500 pages and it has about 1,200 screenshots. So it's a very detailed, exhaustive list of all the features that you can find in NEMO, how to configure them, and how to customize them. It's kind of the Bible in terms of NEMO features, really. And we always want to say that, but it is a feature manual, is not a user guide. It doesn't tell you how to run your lab. It doesn't tell you, how your processes should be. It just documents the features and how to set them up, how to configure them, and it's up to you really to use it any way that fits with your lab. So the main features of NEMO, I'll go over those pretty quick. The calendar, that's where you'd go to reserve tools. So I'll show a little bit about that. We have tool control. Once you have a reservation, you get into the lab and you start enabling a tool to start using it. We have the kiosk, which is a different kind of view of tool control that is meant to be run on tablets. So that's, I'll also have a little video that will show about how it works in the lab so you guys can get an idea of the kind of physical aspect of it. We have in NEMO interlock support, so we have support for some custom interlocks that we use at NIST, and also for some more mainstream interlocks, we have support for the red relay interlock out of the box, and for the ProXR relays out of the box. Now, you can always implement your own version if you have a different type of interlock. We've made it very flexible so that can be done. In fact, at first we only had the web relay extra interlock, and somebody else contributed the implementation for the ProXR relay. So thanks to Matt Lowe's at the University of Minnesota for contributing that. We also have supplies and materials in NEMO, so allows you to set up your gloves or other things that you might be setting at the facility. And materials, let's say if you have an instrument tool that deposit, I don't know, gold or platinum or some things like that, you can also have that set up in NEMO as well. And finally, I mean, this is just a few of the main features. There's a lot more, but have to keep the list somewhat short, otherwise we'll be there forever. The resources, and resources are pretty important in NEMO. It allows you to link either tools or areas to some resources, and you can set them up any way you want. You can set your entire lab as a resource and have everything depend on it, or you can set resources like gas. You can have oxygen as a resource, you could have water, electricity as a resource, and then link your tools and either partially or completely dependent on that resource. Now, what that allows you to do is, if there's maintenance happening, you can just schedule that, and nobody will be able to use the tools that are fully dependent on that resource during the time of the maintenance. Or if it's a partial, they'll be able to use the tool, but let them know that the tool won't be full capacity. There's certain things that won't be available for it. So that's for the kind of main features of NEMO. And again, there's a lot more. I refer you to the feature manual for a complete list of everything that can be done. And about the more recent additions, and so that's more for people who are familiar with NEMO and have been in some of the talks over the past few years where we've talked about NEMO. This stuff is more recent. Like as Rob mentioned, we added the area capacity. So that allows you to control how many people can be in a certain area, like the clean room at a time, and prevent others from reserving if there's already a capacity reached. We've added some small features. This is a very small feature, the ability to impersonate people, but it's been extremely useful, both for testing, if you want to just check out NEMO and use the Splashpad version that we have, which is a kind of a prepackaged app with some tools and some data in it. You can now impersonate other users, so you can switch and kind of see what a regular user would do. That's really helpful, so you don't have to kind of log out and log back in, which is not really available in that Splashpad image. So that allows you to do this, and also for sport, for us, it allows us to kind of see what other people are seeing. So if somebody's having an issue, then we can kind of see, okay, that's how they see things in NEMO, and yes, indeed, this thing should be different or somewhere, or just different. Yeah. We've added two features around the questions that you can ask people once they're done using a tool. For instance, we ask once they're done, you can set up in NEMO a few questions that would pop up. So once they're done with their experiment, or what they're doing with the tool, they'll be asked a few questions. Well, now we added a history of that so that you can kind of go back and see what answers people gave to those questions. It's useful for staff. It's also useful for just regular users, because they can go and see, okay, that's how I kind of used the tool a little while ago. That can be also useful for metadata or other things that you might do post-processing wise, if you want to collect more information about the kind of experiment that the person ran. So that's been added over the past year. And to the same kind of sense, we added the tool usage counter. This one is also linked to those type of questions, and it just keeps track. It keeps a tally of certain answers. One example, and I'll show that in a little bit, is for instance, if you have a tool where you're doing etching, and you want to know, you ask the person at the end, how long did you etch for? They say 20 minutes, then it adds it to a counter. So the next person comes in, they answer 10 minutes, the counter will update to 30. That allows us at NIST to keep track, and for some maintenance that we need to do every, I don't know, 100 or 1,000 minutes, then we can keep track of that that way, and that counter can be reset. And we can also set emails when it reaches a certain number, or those type of things. And then another one that was added that was talked about a little bit in the past is a way to provide, so a lot of labs use the buddy system, and we've kind of talked a little bit about the different options, and we finally kind of settled on a very generic board. We call it the buddy board. It's really a message board that where people can ask, you know, hey, I'm planning on coming this weekend. Between those times, is anybody else available? Those type of things. So you can reply, send you email, and when somebody replies to your request, you know, that sort of thing. Very, very straightforward implementation there. We didn't want to go too crazy with it. And then the last one, that's in terms of recent, that's not even released yet. It's going to be released next week. We added also the same way we have questions after you use the tool. We added questions that can be set up at reservation time. That allows you to ask, you know, gather information when people are planning to come, and just ask certain questions that might be relevant, and that you could then use for also some post data processing or other things like that, put it together with the after usage questions. So we added a way to do that as well. All right, so that's pretty much it for the feature-wise what we have added, and I'll show all this, or most of this, very, very quickly, right after I talk about the hierarchy of users. The first type we have, the regular user. This is just your typical facility user that can reserve and use tools, can see details about tools, if they can report certain issues if they see something wrong happening with the tool. They can also reserve and log in to areas. So log into the clean room, or if you have access control areas, those can be set up and they can do that. We have a slightly elevated permission-wise role, which is the service personnel. That has also been added over the past year, where those are not staff users really, they're just regular user with just a little bit more privilege, where they can use tools even if the tool is shut down, or has like a, you know, in NEMO it's set as shutdown or under maintenance. So they can still go and do that. They can also go into the clean room, for instance, even if there is an outage or something, they can still go in it at any time, and they are shown a little bit differently on the dashboard in different colors, so we know who they are. Then we have staff users, so they can do a lot more than regular users and service personnel. They can do all of the above, but they can also create outages, create users, projects. They can bill for supplies. They can train users directly, or at least record the training sessions in NEMO. They can qualify users to use a tool. They can authorize users to access certain areas at certain time. They can create alerts. I mean, there's a lot more. Again, for a complete list, I'll refer you to the feature manual to see exactly all that could be done with it. And then the final noteworthy role is really the admin role, and that is usually reserved to just a few people in your lab, in your facility. those people can impersonate others, and they can also have access to the detailed administration. That is where all the tools are set, all the usage are recorded, all of that, and they have the ability to go in and even edit those things if needed be. So very high privilege there. It's basically a read and write access to the database, pretty much. So yeah, so those are the main roles for users. So I'll demo real quick some of those. Mostly I'll be focusing on the user experience, not as much of the staff. If you see from the user's perspective, the staff user can do it all plus a little bit more, and they can also set up everything. But you'll see from the user's perspective what those kind of setup of this configuration look like. So I will switch over to NEMO. So this is what NEMO looks like. The first time you would go in, the first user, once they've been added to it, that's maybe not all of this, but they'll see some of that stuff. Mouse. Here we go. You can see at the top here, the first thing is the training. So if you set it up in NEMO, and you can set any kind of training you want, it can either be a link to some other training that you have, or you can do it in NEMO. There's a way to configure that. That will be the first step for them before they can use anything, before they can create reservations, before they can use tools or do any of that stuff. Then they'll have to complete that. Then you have some of those sort of sticker notes with the upcoming reservations here. And it sounds like I'm late for some of them. There is a part here where we show all the outages and lots of things that are going on in the lab. And here we have the usage. So I'm currently using the dicing saw, and this is another one where if I wanted to log into the clean room, I could do it from here. That's also configurable. The last part of this first landing page is this dashboard. Those items, all of those icons you're seeing here, they can be customized, so you can set anything you want. We typically have most of those with the calendar and the tool control, but it could really be anything you want it to be. We have this, for instance. I mean, you could even have our website if you want on yours. Anyway, you can really configure it. It's very flexible. So I'll show first thing first before I can do anything. I'll show that this is just a small one that we had set up very quickly, just to show an example of what that could look like. So I'll just go over just some policies, and you can set things where you would ask users a question. Well, I pick the wrong one, but if they pick the good one, the right answers, they can keep going. And at the end of the training, there is the submit button to kind of officially complete it. And now I should be able to reserve and do a whole bunch of stuff in NEMO that I would not have been able to do without completing the training. So the first thing I'll show, as a user, you come in, you want to look here, you have the sidebar. I just expanded everything, but we have two components, the sidebar and the calendar itself. And the sidebar contains two sections. If they're set in NEMO, you can also not have areas if you don't want to, or you could even not have tools. That's how flexible NEMO is. And as we were talking about before about the area capacity, this is where you can see it, right? And you can set it. There's a sort of a hierarchy, like a parent relationship. So if you had, 5 people here, 5 people there, and somebody would try to come in here, there will be access would be refused because it would go over the capacity of 10, excuse me, for the entire campus. So, and that can be changed. For instance, at NIST, we've been constantly kind of playing with the numbers and how many people have been allowed to go back in. And so, yeah, sometimes you have to change it and raise it or all that. You can see here, just by hovering over, who is currently in it. So that's kind of a nice quick view of to see who's currently in it. We have different colors for the different statuses. Green is a staff user, staff member. And red here is a regular user who's overstaying, meaning they had a reservation for, let's say, a few hours, and they're still in there after the fact. So they should probably, you know, be told to leave soon or something like that. But you can kind of see them, and if need be, a staff member could just go in and go try to find that person if there was capacity issues or things like that. So reservation-wise, we can see here different tools with different little icons. So this gives you the status of the tool. This one here is shut down. This one here, currently using, but it also requires maintenance. But you know, I can still use it during that time. This tool specifically here is requires a prior reservation to the clean room. So this is how we get to control people, is we can link certain tools to the actual room that they're in, which then has a capacity. And so before I can make a reservation here, I'll have to, I can show you, I'm going to try to make a reservation here. And it tells me that I have to first create a reservation in the clean room. So that means I got to plan when I'm going to be in the clean room. So let's say I want to use this tool on Thursday at 9. Then I'll need to go first and create my reservation in the clean room. Just side note, but as you can see, there is the clean room maintenance that was mentioned before here. So the only thing I have to do is have a reservation during the beginning of my tool reservation. So if I want to use the tool at 9, I need to make sure that at 9 I have a reservation in the clean room. So once I do this, I can pick which project I want the reservation to be linked to. So I'll choose this project. Now I have a reservation here for the clean room on Thursday for 45 minutes. And this time I can reserve the tool. Same thing, I'll be asked for the project, but now I can use it. So what we've done here is we made it so that the beginning is when it needs to be done, the reservation for the room. This is because most people will just go in, set their experiments or set their sample or whatever they're doing, and then they'll leave the clean room, but the tool will still be going, and they'll come back another time to stop it. So that allows us to do that and control the time that everybody's coming to the clean room. I'll also show another, so we can set policies on tools, and again, I'll refer you to the feature manual. You're probably going to get sick of me saying feature manual by the end of this, but yeah, there's a lot of policies that can be set on a per tool basis, how long a tool can be reserved, what's the minimum, maximum amount of time, those type of things. And so I'll show you here, if I try to make a reservation of 15 minutes for this tool, I get a little warning that there's a conflict with the policy, because this tool requires a minimum of 45 minutes. So if I set at least 45 minutes, then this time I'll pick my project and it should let me create my reservation. So typically people would go in, start creating their reservation, plan ahead for how they're going to use tools and what they're going to do. You can move them, you know, if you change your plans, you can extend them if you want, if you're going to be staying longer, others, and you can also cancel them if you decide, you know, I'm actually not going to be using this tool anymore. So that's kind of for the regular tools. Now you can set configurations on tools. That's yet another way to configure certain tools. And if I try to make a reservation here for this tool has a configuration, so I have to pick, you know, how I'm going to be using, which in this case blade type I'm going to use for this tool. And this one has the option where I can configure the tool myself. Otherwise, this will be used for staff members to know when they need to change certain configuration on tools. All right, so now I can create this reservation. And then the last kind of thing I'm going to show real quick is, you know, I had talked about the reservation questions that we added. So if here, what I did is I created questions and I linked them to a specific project. Those questions, again, you'll have to look in the feature manual, but those questions can be set with all tools, all areas, all reservations, or they can also be set specifically on certain areas or specifically on certain tools, and even specifically for certain projects. So this is very flexible and you can kind of set it any way you want. And now those questions will show up. I'm just gonna and now I was able to create my reservation, and the information is provided here, and it's also accessible through NEMO's API. So if you have another tool that will connect to NEMO and grab a bunch of information from the tools, the reservations, all that, then you can grab all that from the API and put all that together. So, I mean, that's pretty much it for reservations, really. There's a couple more things that I could show you. You have, that's also been, by the way, something that was contributed by somebody else, a view of all tools. There's also a all tools and all areas, so you can really see everything that's happening. That's customizable as well. You can turn them on or not based on how you want to use it. And I can see my own personal schedule to just see how my week is looking like, what I'm doing. So that's the first step. You know, user would come in, plan his week, make a bunch of reservations, answer questions if need be, kind of set everything up. And once that's done, then they'll typically go to the lab and they want to go and start using a tool. So that is where they would go to the tool control page. And here you can put, so you can set a lot of information, I'll just put a few, but you can have a picture for your tools, description, and we recently added also the ability to add documents. This one here is a straight up URL to a web page, but you can also upload your own document directly and have a link to it. So you can use it either way. If you already have a repository with a bunch of documents, you can put links. If not, you can store them directly with the NEMO and they'll all show up right here. So this one, you can see the tool cost, that can be set. Also, I'm referring to the feature manual for that. There's a section on how to set this up. We can see details here about the tool. So this is just mostly here, I'm just showing the information that is set with that tool. Excuse me. And we can see who is responsible for that tool, who are the backup staff users for that tool. There is that email address where all the issues are automatically reported and emailed to that. So you can set different emails if you want it for different tools. The location of the tool, you know, we can also see resources, and I did talk to you a little bit about this, and we can see here that are the this tool is dependent on the oxygen and dependent on the facility, the NanoFab. So that can be done here. And so I can start and kind of use this. If you remember, in order to use this tool here, I'll show. So maybe I'll start with another one just to make it easier. But let's see. Well, I'm already using this one. So you can enable it with the button, and then I'm going to stop using it just to show you here. And my usage of this is done. And now just to go back on this one, if you remember, I had to reserve the clean room first. Well, I also have to be in the clean room first before I can start using this tool. I'll try just to show that actually it doesn't let me do it, right? So good, I need to be logged in first. So I would typically, physically, like I would actually go into the lab, and in this case, badge in or log in. I'm not really able to show that, so I'll show you one way to do it is to log in from this screen, and I can just log into the clean room here as long as I have a reservation. Or I can do it because I enabled it in the calendar view. That one is pretty nice because it kind of allows you to select here. So I already had created a prior reservation. So I'll log into the clean room. And now, if everything went well, I should be able to start using this tool. Here we go. So I can use this tool for a little while. That tool is pretty straightforward. I'm going to show, again, a different type of configuration that can be set. This one specifically, if I start using it, then this one has a bunch of questions. You can also see what I had talked about briefly before about the usage counter. We can have this. And so this is asking me a few questions after I'm done using it. So I'm currently using it, and if I want to stop, I'll have to answer those questions. So I'll pick this, and I will have it at 100. I'll put this at 40 minutes. I don't have any comments. I'll demo this part too, but this one is we call it group of questions, so it could be repeated. So let's say I did 2 processes. This one was 5 minutes. Then I'll stop using it. The counter incremented, so that's all good. And this one does have the data history, so I can see here the answers to my questions. So today I did use this and did that. So all good with that. Just one more example with this one. This one we have linked to material. So in this case, the slurry. So if I say that I used 30 milliliters, when I stop it, so okay, I'm done. That's how much I used. Then it will let me know that it was withdrawn from all supplies or material, and so I would be billed for that here. And that is it for the website part of controlling tools. And before I show you another video, I'll just talk briefly about the other couple of options. The status dashboard shows who's doing what. Currently logged in to the clean room, but I can see who else is there. I can here see who is using what tool. I can also see what tools are problematic right now. And I'll also show you just what this looks like. As I mentioned, it's a very straightforward, simple way of implementing this, where you can just reply, and this was a request that I made before. But yeah, I can reply reply directly here. Since it's mine, I can edit. And what will happen if somebody else answers, I'll get a little badge thing up there that telling me that I have a new reply to my request. So, you know, I can show you real quick what the admin view kind of looks like. It's very similar. I have all that. I just have a few more options, like scheduling an outage, where I can also pick a tool and schedule an outage. Just put that here. I can also make them recurring if I want to. So the admin just also has the ability to set a lot of the stuff that I've already talked to you about. So, you know, in order to not have this go over too long, I'm gonna stop there and again refer you to the feature manual for how, you know, what else can be done by the admin. All right, so, you know, we saw how, you know, the user can reserve and use tools, and I'll show this real quick. Rob made this video last week to kind of show how it's set up inside. So I briefly talked about the kiosk, which is the way that is mainly used with NEMO for enabling tools, and it is linked to a badge reader. So that can all be set in NEMO. And in this case, Rob is gonna badge in and select a tool, select the project he's working on and enable it. And yeah, he's gonna do that with 2 different tools. There's another tool here that he's going to enable. And yeah, and this is a custom enclosure that was made at NIST. So we have a tablet and then the badge reader, and then it's linked to the interlocks. I mean, NEMO is linked to the interlocks, and it enables the tool. And this is what it looks like after the status dashboard. Just go over this really quick, but you can see that was on Friday. He had logged into those tools. And when you're done, same thing, you go back to the tablet and you can badge out and disable those tools. And yeah, that's it. So that was, you know, a physical way. I think we always talk about, you know, interlocks and badge readers and tablets, but this is just a good way to show you guys what it looks like in the lab. I mean, it looks pretty slick, especially with the custom enclosure and all. So I think I've used most of my time, but I'll just real quick see if there's any questions. Yeah, I have 1 minute, so I'll just do this real quick. Does NEMO have bidding capabilities? Not NEMO directly, but you know, I'll talk about this later. But there's a plugin that we've been working on that allows you to set some of the bidding. So yes, that is something that's been asked quite a bit. So I'll definitely talk about this in my presentation about bidding. I think about plugins. So it's at 4.5. So